Post 1. I'm a 29-year-old woman engaged to David, 30. We've been together for almost 4 years, and on the surface, we look like the most boringly stable couple you could imagine. We both come from middle-class backgrounds, both our parents are still together, and neither of us has dramatic family money or debts hanging over us. I actually make a little more than David does, and I've never once thrown that in his face. Money has never been a source of stress between us. We've split rent, bills, vacations, everything, right down the middle. That's why I was blindsided when what should have been the happiest time of my life got hijacked by someone who isn't even part of this relationship. Enter Lacey. She's David's best friend from high school, the one who prides herself on being the cool girl who's not like other women. Lacey is one of those people who has to announce it constantly. How she doesn't wear much makeup, how she watches sports, how she can hang with the guys. It's exhausting. For years, I tolerated her because I thought she was harmless. She'd tag along to group events, laugh too loudly at David's jokes, occasionally make a passive-aggressive comment about how I scored a good one with him. Nothing I couldn't roll my eyes at and move on from. But when David and I got engaged, everything changed. Everyone else congratulated us, hugged us, toasted us. Lacey? She decided to turn our engagement announcement into her personal TED Talk about prenups. Right there in front of David's parents, siblings, cousins, and me, she launched into a speech about how men need to protect themselves these days, and how David was too smart to get trapped. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a passing comment. It was loud, performative, and humiliating. I tried to brush it off at first. We don't have assets. We don't own property. We're not millionaires hiding investment portfolios. There's literally nothing to protect. I figured she was trying to stir the pot, and if I ignored it, it would blow over. Except it didn't. Lacey doubled down. She's since called me a gold digger to my face. While I make slightly more than David, she's cornered David's friends at parties and said things like, "Can you believe he's not making her sign anything?" That's how men get ruined. She posts vague memes about modern women taking advantage on Instagram, always with captions like #truth or #protectyourself. She even had the audacity to message David's mom a YouTube video about how divorces are rigged against men. At first, I laughed about it with David, expecting him to roll his eyes with me. Instead, he hesitated. He said, "Maybe if it'll make her stop, we should just do it." That floored me. It wasn't about him wanting a prenup for himself. It was about appeasing her. And that's when I realized he's not protecting himself. He's protecting her feelings. I'm not anti-prenup in principle. If one of us had a business, major assets, or something that actually needed to be shielded, I'd have no problem. But signing one just to pacify his best friend? That feels like inviting her to sit at the head of our table. It feels like starting a marriage with a third party dictating the terms. And the more she tantrums, the less willing I am to entertain the idea. I've stayed calm longer than I probably should have. I told David directly, I'm not signing a prenup just because Lacey is stomping her feet. I thought he'd laugh and agree. Instead, he keeps circling back with, "It's not a big deal. Maybe it would make things easier." Every time he says that, I feel another crack forming. I keep reminding myself that David chose me, not her. But lately, I feel like he's more invested in keeping her happy than protecting us. I lie awake at night, wondering how I let it get this far without shutting it down harder. I'm supposed to be planning a wedding, not debating with a self-proclaimed pick-me who seems to want the spotlight more than anything else. So here I am, engaged but unsettled, feeling like I'm fighting a ghost. A ghost that wears crop tops, quotes Andrew Tate, and posts Instagram stories about loyalty tests. Am I the jerk for refusing to sign a prenup just because my fiance's best friend insists on it, even if it would make her stop? First comment, NTA. This isn't about a prenup, it's about boundaries. If he's willing to let his best friend dictate your marriage, that's a huge red flag. Second comment, NTA. Prenups aren't bad, but doing one just to appease his friend is absurd. If he can't see how manipulative she is, that's the real issue. Update 1. I wish I could say things calmed down after my first post, but they didn't. If anything, Lacey ramped up. It was like the engagement announcement had flipped a switch in her, and she decided it was her personal mission to bulldoze her way into every corner of our relationship. She started calling and texting anyone connected to David, trying to recruit them as her soldiers. She called his sister one night and told her she needed to talk sense into him before I trapped him. She messaged one of his coworkers on Facebook, a guy David barely even knows outside of work, and wrote, "You're a man. You get it. Tell him he needs to protect himself." That coworker pulled David aside the next day and told him the whole thing made him uncomfortable. Lacey brushed it off later as just looking out for him. It didn't stop there. She escalated to social media. Every time I logged in, there was another post from her. Screenshots of articles about messy divorces, rants about good men getting drained dry, hashtags like #SmartMenSign and #ProtectYourself. She never used my name, but it was obvious who she meant. The digs were thinly veiled, and people we both know picked up on it. A couple of my own friends even reached out privately, asking if I was okay. They could see the writing on the wall. She wasn't going to let this go. David finally admitted he was exhausted by her constant pressure, but instead of telling her to stop, he turned to me and said, "Maybe if we just sign something, she'll finally stop." I was floored. I asked him directly, point blank, "Do you want a prenup, or do you just want her quiet?" He didn't answer. He just looked away. That silence told me everything I needed to know. The part that cut deepest wasn't even the silence. It was the fact that he couldn't bring himself to say, out loud, "I want this for me." He was thinking about her feelings, not ours. I realized then that this wasn't about contracts or money. It was about influence. Lacey had so much sway over him that he'd rather placate her than stand by me. I've tried to keep this embarrassment under wraps from my family because how do you explain something this ridiculous? Oh, by the way, my fiance's best friend is trying to write herself into our marriage contract. It sounds absurd, but it's been eating at me day by day. My sleep is a mess. My concentration at work is shot. Even small things, like watching him scroll through his phone, make me wonder if he's reading her latest tantrum. I feel like my entire engagement has been hijacked by someone who should be, at most, an occasional presence at group barbecues. At night, when I'm lying awake, I keep going back and forth in my head. I wanted to believe this would blow over, that Lacey would eventually get bored and latch onto something else. But the more she stirs the pot, the clearer it becomes. This is the hill my relationship might die on. And the worst part is, it's not even David and me fighting anymore. It's me trying to haul him back toward reason while he stands in quicksand, too busy worrying about how she'll react if he tells her no. I shouldn't be competing with his best friend to be heard in my own relationship. I shouldn't have to wonder if the man I'm marrying is brave enough to set boundaries with someone who thrives on drama. So here I am, still engaged, technically, but feeling like the foundation is already cracked. I love David, but I can't ignore the fact that every time this comes up, he leans toward appeasing her instead of standing with me. I wanted a wedding. What I got instead was a battle I never signed up for. And the more it drags on, the more I wonder if this is my sign to walk away. First comment, NTA. Lacey is inserting herself into your relationship on purpose. David needs to shut this down, not push you to give in. Second comment, NTA. The fact that he won't answer whether he actually wants a prenup says it all. He's just trying to appease her, not you. Update 2. I kept hoping things would turn around, that David would finally snap out of it and tell Lacey to stop inserting herself into our relationship. But the opposite happened. The closer we got to the wedding, the louder she became, and the quieter David got. Every week felt like a new stunt from her. Another post, another phone call to one of his family members, another pointed joke about gold diggers at some group gathering. And every week, David seemed to shrink a little more into himself instead of standing up to her. The breaking point wasn't some big screaming match. In fact, it was the opposite. It was silence. We were sitting at the kitchen table one night, half-heartedly going over the guest list. I was writing down names and trying to keep my spirits up, and David was glued to his phone. Out of nowhere, he muttered, almost casually, "Maybe we should meet with a lawyer, just to make it official." I stopped writing. My pen literally froze above the paper. I asked him, "Do you even want a prenup? Or do you just want Lacey off your back?" For a long moment, he didn't say a word. He just stared at his phone like the question wasn't worth answering. Then he sighed, shrugged, and went back to scrolling. That silence was louder than any argument we could have had. In that moment, I realized something that had been simmering beneath the surface for months. I couldn't marry someone who was more afraid of disappointing his best friend than of losing me. It wasn't about the prenup anymore. It wasn't about money. It was about the fact that he was willing to let her dictate his decisions, even when it came to our future. I told him it was over. Calmly, quietly, but firmly. I said I couldn't keep fighting a third person in our relationship, especially when he refused to push back against her. He didn't argue. He didn't beg me to reconsider. He didn't even look surprised. He just looked tired, bone-deep tired, like a man who knew he'd backed himself into a corner and didn't have the energy to climb out. That was almost worse than if he had yelled. I packed a bag that night and went to stay with my sister. My family didn't even ask for details. They could see the truth on my face. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking up in a panic. 2 weeks later, the photos started popping up online. David and Lacey in Las Vegas, standing under neon lights with cheap matching rings on their fingers. Her smile stretched across the frame like she had just won a prize. His face, well, I've known him long enough to read it. He looked dazed, like he was running on autopilot. She posted the first photo with the caption, "When you know, you know. Real men commit." The next one read, "Some women chase, but I get chosen." Hashtags filled the comments. Hashtag real love. Hashtag smart men sign. Hashtag Vegas vows. There was even a live stream where she giggled into the camera, threw pointed shade at me without using my name, and declared she had proved the haters wrong. I thought I would feel devastated. Instead, I felt embarrassed. Not for me, but for him. It was obvious what had happened. She had pushed until she got what she wanted, and he had folded because that's all he ever did. The entire thing reeked of performance. It wasn't love. It wasn't even partnership. It was a spectacle. My phone lit up nonstop that weekend. Friends from college, coworkers, even distant relatives who still followed him on social media were sending me screenshots. Some asked if I was okay. Others just wrote things like, "You dodged a bullet." A few messages dripped with pity, but even those didn't sting. I answered everyone the same way. I'm fine. Better off, actually. And the truth is, I am. I'm not jealous. I'm not heartbroken. I feel like I dodged a train that was barreling straight for me. I escaped before I got pulled onto a stage I never wanted to stand on. If Lacey wanted the spotlight, she's got it now. She can keep it. The only thing I feel lingering is a kind of melancholy. Not for me, but for David. Sad that he let himself be manipulated this badly. Sad that he couldn't draw boundaries until it was too late. Sad that he let someone else's voice drown out his own. But even that sadness fades a little more each day. When people send me her smug posts now, I just shake my head and delete them. They can live in their circus together. I don't need to watch the show. I've moved on, and every morning I wake up lighter. First comment. NTA. Breaking up was the smartest thing you could have done. Now they're showing the world exactly why you dodged a bullet. Second comment, NTA. A Vegas wedding after 2 weeks? That's not romance. That's a stunt. You escaped the drama at the perfect time. Update 3. It's been about 6 weeks since the Vegas wedding, and if you looked only at David and Lacey's social media feeds, you'd think they were the poster children for true love. Every post is carefully curated. Matching outfits, sunset selfies, date night, reels, with romantic songs playing in the background. Lacey has turned their relationship into a constant highlight reel, and David, well, he just goes along with it. The captions make me laugh, if I'm being honest. She writes things like, when your best friend becomes your forever, and some women wish, but I live it. There are hashtags stacked a mile high. Hashtag couple goals, hashtag smartman sign, hashtag Vegas vows, hashtag forever started. Here. The tone is so smug, it's almost parody. From the outside, you'd think they were blissfully happy. But I know David. I can see the tiny tells. In every picture, his smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. In every video, he hangs back a little, letting her do the talking, nodding at the right times. He looks more like a prop than a partner. Mutual friends say the performance extends into real life. Lacey drags him to every outing she can find, loudly introducing him as my husband who actually knows how to commit. She never misses a chance to remind people that he chose her over me. At one dinner, apparently, she raised her glass and toasted to real love, the kind that doesn't back down when outsiders try to interfere. Everyone clapped politely, but later, one of David's old friends messaged me to say it was one of the most awkward moments he'd ever sat through. I don't reply to those messages anymore. At first, people sent me screenshots or updates like they were giving me evidence. Now, I just thank them and move on. I don't need proof. I already know what this is. It's a performance, and like all performances, it will eventually run out of steam. But I'll admit, there's a strange part of me that finds it freeing to watch. I'm not in the spotlight. I'm not the one being paraded around like a trophy. I can go about my day without hashtags or live streams, while they keep exhausting themselves trying to prove something to an invisible jury. So let them play their parts. Let her write the captions and stack the hashtags and make every dinner toast about how she won. I don't need to win anything. I've already got what I wanted, my peace. First comment, NTA. They're clearly performing for social media, not living a genuine relationship. You're right to step back and let them burn themselves out. Second comment, NTA. Every hashtag she posts just screams insecurity. Real happiness doesn't need an audience, but she clearly does. Update 4. It's been about 3 months since the Vegas wedding, and the tone of David and Lacey's performance is already shifting. The endless hashtags and gloating captions have slowed down. Now her posts are longer, more defensive. Instead of, when you know, it's, real love is about fighting through the haters. Instead of victory laps, It's justifications. Friends who still see them in person have told me the vibe is different too. Apparently, David looks exhausted all the time. Lacey drags him into every live stream she does, and he just sits there, nodding while she talks about proving the doubters wrong. At a recent get together, someone told me she wouldn't let him talk to an old female coworker without hovering right next to him. The jealousy, the control, it's all coming out now. The biggest bomb came last week when Lacey announced she was pregnant. The problem? Her story doesn't add up. One day she's 8 weeks, the next she's 11. She posts belly pics that look suspiciously staged, then goes out drinking with her friends the same night. Even David's sister reached out privately and said she thinks Lacey is faking it to keep him tied down. And as for David, apparently he's been quietly telling a couple of mutual friends that he regrets how things turned out. Nothing dramatic, just little admissions like, I miss the calm I used to have. He hasn't said it to me directly, but hearing it secondhand was enough to confirm what I already suspected. He knows he made a mistake. I thought hearing that would make me feel vindicated. Instead, it just makes me sad. Sad that he let himself be manipulated this badly. Sad that he couldn't draw boundaries until it was too late. Sad that he traded a steady relationship for a circus performance he never wanted. But I don't feel guilty, and I don't feel tempted to take him back if he ever asks, because at the end of the day, he made his choice, and I made mine. First comment, NTA. Everything you've described is a manipulation 101. David might finally be waking up, but that doesn't mean you owe him anything. Second comment, NTA. A fake pregnancy to lock him down? That's beyond toxic. You did the right thing walking away. Update 5. It finally happened. David reached out to me directly. After months of hearing through mutual friends that he regretted how things turned out, he sent me a long message late at night. It was a wall of text, apologies, excuses, and little hints that he wanted me back. He sent me a long message late at night. It was apologies, excuses, and little hints that he wanted me back. At one point, he even said, "If you'd take me back, I'd do things differently this time." Instead of ignoring it, I typed one line. I'm curious, did you get a prenup before marrying her? The typing bubbles popped up instantly. Then came a string of curses and insults I won't bother repeating. That told me everything I needed to know. I blocked his number right after, not out of anger, but because I refused to be his backup plan after his impulsive marriage blew up in his face. Of course, Lacey couldn't stay quiet. 2 days later, she posted one of her infamous rants. Some women can't let go. Sad when exes try to crawl back into the picture, which is ironic considering it was David crawling back to me. Friends who saw it messaged me screenshots, some shocked, others laughing at how transparent it was. The truth is, I don't care what either of them says anymore. I don't care if her pregnancy is real. I don't care if their marriage collapses next week or drags on for years. I'm done being part of their circus. I've got my piece, and I'm not giving it up for anyone. First comment, NTIA. Blocking him was the smartest move. You're not his safety net, and he doesn't get a do-over after everything he put you through. Second comment, NTA. His timing says it all. He only came back once. Things with her started crumbling. You deserve better than being Plan B. Final update. 1 year later. It's been a year since everything blew up, and I can honestly say I've never felt more at peace. David and Lacey's marriage? It didn't last. Word got back to me through mutuals that they split after just 9 months. The pregnancy she bragged about so loudly? It mysteriously vanished from her posts. No announcement, no explanation, just quietly scrubbed from her timeline. Some people think she faked it to keep him tied down. Others think it was a story that fell apart once too many questions were asked. Either way, there's no baby. David apparently moved back in with his parents for a while. Friends who still talk to him say he looks embarrassed whenever anyone mentions Vegas. Lacey, for her part, is still posting online. Now it's inspirational quotes about self love and finding your tribe. The tone is less gloating and more defensive, like she's still trying to convince people she won. As for me, life is calm. I kept the apartment, focused on my career, and rebuilt my routines. I've started dating again, slowly and cautiously, but without the constant background noise of someone else's drama hanging over my head. For the first time in a long time, my choices feel like they're really mine. Sometimes people still send me screenshots of Lacey's rants or David's awkward appearances in mutual friends' posts, but I don't even bother opening them anymore. That part of my life feels like a play I left at intermission. The stage is still there, the actors are still shouting, but I've walked out into the fresh air. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: peace is worth more than proving you're right. Walking away was the hardest choice I've ever made, but also the smartest. And every day since, I've been grateful that I trusted myself enough to do it.